Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and I'm Ellie. And tonight I've got William. And you've seen on our title, it's a World War III, a war against what we're seeing going on with our planet, and what the globalist climates want. Um, and it's almost like what we're going to look at is global warming, global cooling, global climate, global climates, and scientists. And I have been looking into this for a very long time. Um, uh, the thing about it is, I did ecology a lot during school, and I've told you guys this, and quite a few scientists or professors or researchers I have followed all along, and I thought highly of them. And then they joined up with this global climate um, research. And I thought, okay, they're going to tell us the truth. Well, they disappeared, and I couldn't. One of them is Ian Clark. He's a professor of earth sciences at the University of Ottawa in Canada. There's a few others, but he was one I kind of really kept an eye on because I really valued his opinion. And so tonight, we're going to go over a little bit of what these scientists and professors and NASA weather team leader, they come from all walks of life. These are professors, these are researchers, scientists, the people that pull the cores out of the ground and have seen what they look like. And they have a lot of information. And when people say they don't believe in global warming, I say, no, I believe in global warming. I don't believe in human CO2 is causing that warming. I don't believe in the methane because what we're finding out is it's not really that. It's the warming of the planet. Now, you guys got to realize that this is part of what they are saying. So hello to Rindy and of course William's in the room with me. So it's the warming of the planet. Now the warming of the planet does not really cause the weather changes as much as we think it does, and I'll go over a lot of that with me and William discussing it. Now, Professor Nur Shaviv, Institute of Physics, University of Jerusalem in Israel, said, if you ask him, he will tell you. The CO2, it's just like everyone else in the public eye. Listen to what the media had to say each day. And the news report was this fanatical, apocalyptic politicians supporting them that the sky is falling. And you cannot dare these people. You cannot doubt these people. And any doubt about climate change is an intolerance to these people. And they will definitely get in your face and they'll tell you how it is. And it's an impossible thing to discuss with climate changers. And global warming has gone beyond politics now. It's a new kind of, I say it's a new kind of religion because it's so big. And global warming grows as climate scientists say there's actually scientific basis for their theory, but it's crumbling before their eyes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so freaked out at the summit right now at Davos. And they can't keep throwing this little ugly girl in front of us claiming we're ruining her planet, because that's not proof, it's not data, and it's not telling us anything of what's going on. So top scientists from all different fields came together with the intel to tell the truth on CO2. Now, these whistleblowers were once on board with the global climate people. And some of them were even for weather purposes, to figure out why there's a hurricane, why there's a tornado, what causes a tornado, why a hurricane happens, what is the trek of the hurricanes. Because they had to look into it for their own intel so they could tell the people what was going on with the weather. And so experiments were done, which ended up with two different outcomes. So tonight we're going to discuss the original scientists, meteorologists, climate experts, professors, researchers, and what others have found. There were periods, for example, in Earth's history when we had 3 times the amount of CO2 as we do today. Both periods when we had 10 times as much CO2 as we do today. So Professor Ian Clark, he's the Department of Earth Scientist, is the one I was telling you about. If CO2 has allowed the effects on the climate, then you should see it in temperature reconstruction. If we look at climate for the geological time frame, we would never suspect CO2 as a major climate driver. None of the major climate changes in lost, all the changes that are lost in the data, they try to explain it away by this is just CO2, this is methane. And so certainly it never really got past a research scientific range. And there was a Professor John Christie, Department of Atmospheric Science. He's at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. He's the lead author for IPCC. He's NASA Medal Exceptional Scientific Achievement Awards. So this is someone that you can kind of listen to. And I'm just asking you guys listen tonight and come up with your own conclusion. But listening, and I want to give you exactly the credentials for these guys. So you know I'm just not blowing hot air up. You can look these up, and they are real people. Okay, so there is a consensus, he said, of 1,000 scientists on the global warming issue that humans are causing catastrophic change to the climate. And he said the system, he says, well, he's one of the scientists, and there are many that simply think it is not true. And he said that on a paper research that he had done, he said there are 200 scientists that got together, put their facts together, their data, and they found the truth. 50 went up to Congress and Senate and the State Department and showed them. They were washed away by global climate from the Global Economic Group, those that came from Davos, they say, and also the Al Gore Group. Their data to this day stems from what Al Gore has presented, plus more that CO2 and methane is destroying our planet. I found a documentary on with all these guys that got together, and I suggest you watch it. I sent it to William tonight, and we're going to discuss what the documentary showed us for the proof and data. William might have found through the years, and we listen close and decide. We want you to decide for yourself what you believe. And William made a good point before the show about how you take science, and I'll let him tell you what he thinks. So I want you to listen close. Hold on, William. Listen close. Decide for yourself what you believe. You know the side of the G Summit, Al Gore data, global climate data. It's out everywhere. So you decide after tonight listening to me and William. And then I want you to watch the video on YouTube. I'll give you everyone the link. I'll even post the video on Facebook. And you think on this. I believe in these scientists. I have watched and followed them for years. And this is why my belief in the climate change data. Okay, William, go ahead.
So the consensus out there is that science is some sort of a monolith knowing all. And that's not really what science is. Science is being able to take a finding that leads to an understanding that's repeatable someplace else. in another lab someplace else on Earth. It's about gaining knowledge. So anything we know today could even be overturned once we know more about, say, subatomic particles, or how the electromagnetosphere works with subatomic particles. Everything's open to be revolutionized, or a revolution of thought happening. It's happened with mathematics, it's happened with cosmology, it's happened with astronomy, and
medical.
It can happen in any scientific field. Okay, so when they say the consensus of science is X, first of all, there is no consensus in science. There's only repeatable experimentation that leads to a new theory, and it can be overturned at any time. So there is no, this is concrete in science. It's a constantly burgeoning act of learning and understanding knowledge as it can be represented.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, so man-made global warming is no ordinary scientific theory. And if you want to know what the IPCC is, it's an Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And it's made up and it's presented to the media as having a stamp of authority and impressive international organization. So it is something that the government has put together to look at global warming, global cooling. Because you remember, it was global warming, global cooling. It went back and forth for a while, and then they started receiving a lot more data, a lot more intel. These scientists were finally receiving data by sending the weather balloons up, and they were also running it through the computers. And, I'll explain a lot of this as we go. But so they put them in a governmental program to receive grants, and lots of millions of dollars in grants to be able to explain the climate. And that's what it basically was in the 1950s when we were looking at weather modification. And that was part of what I found out. That was part of the original climate people that started looking into this just for the weather, not for what is going on globally. But as the years have went by, they started seeing that we were having tremendous issues and that the planet was warming up. I don't deny the planet isn't warming up. It is a degree each year. And it's been doing it for a very long time. So it's simply the people that are this. There's 2,500 scientists, and if you look at these people on what they were looking into, it was very proper, very correct for them to doing it. But there came a point in time when they started talking to reviewers and government people and so on, and whoever came close to them, they just couldn't agree. It was like the government that had stepped in, and they were making a lot of the decisions. And they were saying, this is what we in the media have agreed upon. This is where I really disagree on how they went about this climate thing and the global thing. And so I'm not going to say half. There was about 200 to 300 that decided they just did not agree with this, and that they wanted to start fresh, look at the data, and see what came out of the data. Well, when they did, it was two different sides. It was they had their data, they had this data, and so they wanted to actually sit and agree, or sit and show the data that these scientists had left. the IPCC, and wanted to show them, hey, this is what we found. Well, they were met with hostility. And they said, that you basically, if you want to convince other people um, that you have to have X amount of scientists to be able to prove it. And they said you have to have X amount of proof, data, intel. And they made these scientists go out and get it. And they also said that it was just pure propaganda, what they wanted to say. So this is a story of how the theory about climate turned into a political ideology, but this group of scientists that had to prove itself. And and then I don't even like to call it environmental movement anymore, because really it's a movement that is influential uh, and partly being moved to the globalist level. And the story of this whole science climate thing, there seems to be a problem in order to um, get funding for these scientists. So they had to do this all on their own. And then when they did it without the funding, then it started creating a panic with the climate scientists. You know, one thing is to say that this is a problem, and the story of how it is a problem, and then you use political people to say it is a problem. You get the ugly girl to come out and say, you're ruining my planet. But it's a bureaucratic bandwagon, is what they called it. A fact of the matter. And so think about it. If these scientists actually decide to prove that this is true, they said the job loss, the overturn of what would happen is, it's too big. It's too big of a globalist thing at this point. They're just going to have to squash the few measly scientists that have something different. And we've seen this with the pandemic. Scientists came out and said they had something. Nope, we're not going to listen to you. And they really feel that this is big business right now. And a lot of the great industry itself is um, pushed towards all of the grants that they can get for all these different departments to push their agenda. And then, of course, censorship and intimidation have been hitting these poor scientists.
Ellie?
Okay, go ahead.
So, in the 50s, there were a few $1 million being put towards climate and climatology and whatnot into the 50s and 60s. But in the 70s, it went from millions to multi-billion-dollar fundings, and science started chasing the dollars, not the overall complete conclusions of climate change. Meaning that if you came up with a favorable conclusion, you would get more funding, and you'd be able to keep yourself in business doing research. And whether if you publish something against that, then you would lose all your funding and you'd be pushed out of the scientific arena. So there was only one conclusion to come up with if you wanted to stay in the universities. So is science chasing dollars? And that's a really poor way to come up with good conclusions. What you need is science chasing the science, and government being out of the equation of what the outcome should be.
Now, there was a Lord Lawson that he's the chancellor of Exchequer. I think I'm saying that right. In the 1980s. He's the first politician to commit government money to global warming research. And they had a very thorough look into the evidence from a whole lot of people, experts in the area, that produced a report that surprised him. And he found out how weak and uncertain the scientists and the science actually was. In fact, there are more. Um, uh, it became to where it was almost frightening, he said. But he openly and not openly, he quietly and privately got a hold of a few and said, wait a minute, this just simply doesn't add up. We are told that the Earth's climate is changing, but Earth climate is always changing in Earth's history. Long history has been countless periods when it's much warmer, much cooler than it is today, when much of the world was covered by tropical forests um, or vast ice sheets. The climate has always changed and trend back to at least 200 years to the end of a very cold uh, period in Earth's history. This cold spell is known to climatologists as the Little Ice Age. In the 14th century of Europe plunged into a little ice age, and we could look for evidence of this and in prints and pictures, ice cores. It's written in history of that time. Now there was another, they say, a not quite an ice age, but it was a time when scientists in this country was very worried, and it was in the 30s and 40s, and this is provable that we dipped down into a serious cold spell. And they were even bringing up these ideas that we were going to sink into an ice age, and they were trying to prepare the people for it. Well, then it lasted for so many years, and then it started warming back up again. So now think of this. If it was 200 years ago and it was cold, and then we warmed up, and then we cooled down, okay? Well, let's go back further, okay? Way back further in time. Let's go back 1,000 years. Well, we're seeing a trend. We're seeing a trend that it was super hot, and sometimes in these hot trends, that it was even warmer. The Earth was warmer at that time than it even is today. And then it would go to a cold. It would warm up again, almost to where we are today, and it would go down again into the cold. It'd go up again, and then went down. And then we got that cold, we got warmed up, and then we had that cold spell in the 30s and 40s. See what I'm saying? There's a pattern. And this is what these scientists were starting to learn was, wait a minute, if it was doing this at this certain time, and then we went cold, and then we went hot, then we went cold, there's a pattern. And this is what the scientists had to study to find out. And what they're looking at is the other side. The Al Gore researchers said from 1975, we have climbed all the way up. Okay. What caused that? And then they go back to 1940s and they said from 1940s on, the planet has warmed up. They said since 1975, the planet has warmed up 1 degree. Okay, it's still warming up 1 degree, folks. Okay. But okay, if it's 1 degree and it stayed 1 degree and it stayed, and it's getting a little warmer, okay, a little warmer. How'd it go zoom? That's what they're looking at. How did it go zoom? Into super hot. We're dying. We're all going to die. Well, in the 70s, me and William was talking about this right before the show. I was thinking, who was the president back then? And Carter. Wow. Okay, wait a minute. Now, in the 70s is when we seen Bernie Sanders and his little group of that came out, and they had this climate idea that it was heating up, and within 8 years it was going to be so hot because it was warming up 1 degree at a time, he said, and we're all going to die. So if we are 1 degree, and we're just slowly getting a little bit hotter each time. Okay, so if we're only here, or let's see, I got to do it over on this side. If the highest is here, William, you're on my way, and then we're here. Okay, we're about here. We're not the hottest yet that it has been in the past. Okay,
Kelly?
just let me finish a little bit, William, and I'll turn it
Okay.
over to you. So, what these scientists are saying is, if it was this hot, 300-400 years ago, we didn't have cars, we didn't have pollution, we didn't have hardly. We've always had the methane, always had the CO2, folks. Now, understand that CO2 has always been there. Methane, it's part of our planet. What we didn't see then when it was highest, no cars, no nothing, no rockets going up. Doesn't this make you question what the heck are they feeding us? Go ahead, William.
So, first of all, carbon dioxide is not a poison, okay? All life on Earth, plant or animal, are carbon-based life forms. That means carbon dioxide. We're carbon-based. So, mammals, reptiles, fish, they all exhale carbon dioxide. They ingest oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, and plants inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen. It's a symbiotic system. Now, in the past, the Earth has been much warmer. There was no industrialization just before the last ice age. And yet, Earth could sustain huge animals like saber-toothed tigers, mammoths, dire wolf, huge predators. That means lots of small predators. That means lots of vegetation just before the last ice age. So temperature can build up, and there's not less food. There's not less available. There's more available, okay? Because the Earth is allowing carbon dioxide out into the living biosphere. Then there can be something like a large caldera blow up like Yellowstone, bury all of that, cause a big ice age swing, and then it goes through the ice age part and then slowly starts warming back up until we are here 10,000 years later. This is the normal cycle of things. Every 11,000 years we go through an ice age and then to a warming period that gets more and more plentiful because there is more carbon dioxide available for more life. Okay.
Okay, so what we've seen, what we're taught, me and him is talking about, that is climate variation in the past is clearly natural. Okay, that's natural. So do we think it's any different today to be alarming about global warming as a culprit? But remember that it was global warming, global cooling, and then it was global warming, and now everybody says if it's a global warming, well, don't worry, we'll just have a global cooling next. Isn't that's the sarcasm that people are starting to get because they can't get their facts straight. And see, this is what these scientists were very upset about because people need to know what is being found out. They want the truth, they want the transparency, and they don't want no ugly girl saying, "You're killing my planet," is proof. And that's basically what they done because when the scientists went to the State Department, then it was the climate's turn to turn in their info, and then they were supposed to give it to the scientists so they could see. Well, they yeah, we'll get to it. Well, they put it off and they put it off and they put it off, and eventually they did try to have a hearing on it. And what they did is instead of bringing these scientists in, they brought in their own globalists from the IPCC that all of the scientists had left and didn't want no part of. Well, they brought in their buddies that were part of this set thing that they wanted to do. They questioned them, and okay, it's global. This is the global climate. This is climate change, and so here it is. And they didn't get nowhere. And and they never did send them their info. So really, the only thing that they're doing is coming up with the Al Gore method of what's going on, except for they took the date when everybody was going to die away. And so um, the culprit is the industrial society. And the rich have now put so much money into it that where they just tell people at the IPCC that you can here's so much money in a grant, you guys can split it up, and if you don't agree with it, then you can hit the road. The problem is all of the data that these scientists that left, they now have control of, and they use it and saying, see, he says this, and then now he's switching it. So he's lying to you. It's the little game that these people play. And so, according to um, uh, of what they want to let everybody know, is that the carbon dioxide is, this is what the globals say, is the cause of the warming of the 20th century. And they looked at basic numbers, and they said, oh, it's the sky's falling. Okay. And so what it does is it's handicapped a lot of these countries. Um, Now, get this. Um, they are saying that before um, 1970, that um, it was peaking. It was starting to rise, and what we found out was, I told you, there was actually a cooling period. Okay, and then they said nothing happened until 1970s. Well, what happened between the 1940s and the 1970s? We're talking a big boom. We're talking the manufacturers went in. We start seeing refrigerators. We start seeing really cool cars, gas guzzlers, and we back then it didn't matter. They were blowing all the pollution into the air, but it was a big boom from the 40s to the 70s. And what they're saying is none of that happened. Why? Why can't they? Why? Why? Because it wouldn't fit their narrative of the 1 degree going up, 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 up. Because if you look at the data, it wasn't there. It was cooling, not heating. You understand? So by the time when it started to cool off, they were saying it was heating up. And in the 70s, it started going up and up and up and up and up. Okay. Well, we had a cooling, and it didn't start going up until the 70s. And they keep lying about the 40s through the 70s. All right, go ahead, William.
So, Randy wants to know why there was a cold spell during the 40s. The truth is, the sun was very quiet. There was very few sunspots. There wasn't a lot of mass ejections towards the Earth. There wasn't a lot of magnetosphere dynamics with the Earth, so it cooled off a little bit. As far as carbon dioxide is dangerous in a closed area, that's true. That's what they use to asphyxiate cats and dogs at your local shelter. But in the real atmosphere, 70% of the atmosphere is actually nitrogen. 20% is oxygen, and only 0.005% of 1% is carbon dioxide. The rest is actually sequestered in human life and in animal life and in plant life. So most of the carbon dioxide actually isn't in the air. It's in living, breathing entities, whether they're walking or they're rooted.
Okay. So are you guys kind of getting the idea of what's going on here? Is like William said, if you have, this is what they're claiming, okay, that the CO2 is taking over the nitrogen and the oxygen, and it's squeezing it out, okay, and that this is what is causing this global warming. Well, Now, when they put that balloon up in the air, they started doing this to reach up into the higher atmosphere. We have always been told that when we have our sky, then we got the atmosphere. We were told the greenhouse effect, and it was warming into the upper atmosphere. Well, when they were sending, that's what they said their data on the computers were saying. When they sent the balloons up to check it, they were actually finding it was cold. It wasn't warming up. There was no warm up. So they lied. And see, this is why the scientists were saying, no, 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 no. There's got to, you have to look at this data because we sent thermometers up there. What did you send? Well, we did it on computer data, facts, intel. We threw it all in the computer and it figured it out and it spit out the answer. Oh, well, no. How could you do that if you don't put something up there to measure the temperature? And this is what they were saying. And this is the kind of, I don't want to say BS, because a lot of these people with climate really believe this. They truly believe that if you put stuff into a computer, it will always give you the right answer. And where a balloon, well, it could have got messed up. It could have got blown off course. There could have been a wind. There could have been snow. There could have, yeah, coulda, woulda, is what they're saying.
Ellie?
Yeah, go ahead.
So as it turns out, the greatest greenhouse gas is actually water vapor.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just water that's evaporated from the ocean that's sitting in atmosphere. As the planet gets warmer, it doesn't get drier. It doesn't have less. It has more water. It has more nitrogen being. Remember, we have nitrogen atmosphere. There's more rain. The rain brings down more nitrogen to the plants. You notice right after it rains, plants green up more. And so this thing about carbon dioxide having any effect on the weather is really silly, because temperature drives the amount of carbon dioxide in the air, not the other way around. It's not carbon dioxide that drives the temperature, it's temperature that drives the amount of carbon dioxide. It's the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's fully backwards.
Right. And all that, and get this, when you get these climate scientists, okay, and you get the ones that are now looking into this, when you get the two of them together and they say, isn't the water, the ocean water or water vapor, the cause of the high levels of CO2? And of course, my scientists would say, yes, yes, it is. Well, when they questioned the other side, they said, well, I'm going to have to agree. Right there just blew their whole climate change out of the water right there. It's the water vapor, and it causes a greenhouse effect. And they're saying the greenhouse effect is due to high levels of CO2, methane, that's causing everything that's happening in our world right now. And it's not.
Ellie?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the oceans cover 2/3 of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And the oceans are actually the lungs of the earth. There's more life going on in the water than there is on land. We live on barren pieces of rock where there's vast amount of life forms all over the surface of the oceans worldwide. There's no way that the small amount of industrialization we have compared to the land mass and compared to the water mass, that we can even have a dent in temperature changes. Mm-hmm. Only locally, say within a city confines, where there's high rises where we trap heat. But as soon as you leave those cities, that all dies away within, just a few miles of the cities. But it's a good argument if you want to scare people, because they're suffering through heat waves with air conditioning losses and this, that, and the other. But as soon as you get on the coast, as soon as you get out on the regular land masses, as soon as you get up at altitude in the mountains, that's all gone. Mm-hmm. It's cold.
Okay, now the other thing that I found out, the oceans are rising due to the icebergs are melting. Okay, now they did this experiment, and the Weather Channel even did it a long time ago. Of when you have high tide, everybody knows high tide, it goes up higher, and low tide, it goes back down. Well, when it goes back down, there's a certain amount of sand it pulls into the ocean, or waves coming back and forth. It will actually pull the sand. Okay, so the water's up higher, and it goes higher, and it goes higher. Now, I learned this early on in ecology. So, is the ocean rising, or is the land disappearing? Now that's up to you guys to decide, okay? The other thing is the ice caps are melting. Now, how it was described to me was, okay, let's have a big block of ice. All right, now let's make a chunk of ice that extends out over the top of the block of ice. Okay, so you got little chunks sticking out there on water. What happens when you put an ice cube when you put an ice cube in water, it melts. Okay, so as the ice caps are moving, then that little chunk falls off. Then you got the next set that's over that water, and of course it's going to melt and it's going to fall off. This has been a natural thing that's been going on for hundreds, thousands of years with these ice caps. Okay, another thing is it melts quicker in salt water. So this is what the scientists have found out. And they found out even during that hottest time that a lot of the Arctic had melted. And what made it through? The polar bears, the penguins, um, all the wildlife that you would find hard in the deep Arctic, they survived. How did they survive? They're still around today, and it didn't kill them. And it was warmer then with no pollution than it is right now. And it's poor polar bears are all going to die. They're not going to die. The grizzlies didn't die. None of these animals at this time died. They still made it through. They still made it through. Even the animals that made it through the cool period during the 30s and 40s that they thought were going to freeze up and go away and they would lose, they're still here. So we're not losing them at the hottest temperatures of the planet, and we're not losing them on the low, which means that these animals adapt. Okay, go ahead.
So there are some places in the planet that are sinking, like in the center of the oceans. But you have to remember, all the Earth's crust is floating. The reason there are oceans is because there's a heavier crust beneath the ocean. The stuff we have as land is the fluffy stuff that comes out of volcanoes and whatnot. And there's a constant subduction in the center of the oceans, and it pushes out to the continents and then builds them up. Then through erosion, they come back down. So in like Florida, that's built up actually out of coral reefs that became white and rose up out of the ocean. And so if they get a tropical storm that gets filled with water, they get erosion there, and they will lose some land. But we're gaining land in Central America and in Mexico through the volcanoes.
Because when the volcanoes, it rises.
Same with here in the Cascades and in Alaska. So it all has to move slowly down the rivers and back into the oceans. It'll be subducted, brought back in, and risen up. We aren't on solid land, and that's the one thing they try to trick people with. We are on floating continents on a sea of molten plastic magma.
Sure are. Um, she was asking about the stratosphere range. Okay, now this is what I learned, and I learned this from the SR-71 pilots. Okay, you got your stratosphere, and it's very, very delicate, they say. That hairspray, remember the stuff? Ellie's like her hair don't move because it's hairsprayed in and out of the aerosol can, and I'm ruining and I'm putting holes in the ozone layer. Um, okay, get this. If it was so delicate, how come we are throwing missiles and satellites right through that ozone layer? They have destroyed the ozone layer in the stratosphere with all their missiles and satellites than I can spraying my hair for 90 years. See what I mean? That it's a farce. It was to I don't know what the deal is. Maybe they didn't like Aquanet. Maybe some rich
So,
hubby didn't like Aquanet. Go ahead, William.
so how the ozone works is it blocks ultraviolet light that causes skin cancer. It doesn't affect the temperature of the earth. When they stopped using CFCs, carbon-based fluorocarbons, that were dangerous to the upper atmosphere, the ozone hole began to close. And so it's been closing ever since we changed the type of CFCs we used in our air conditioning.
That too,
and
yeah.
we quit using the CFCs in our hairspray and started using carbon dioxide, compressed carbon dioxide, and other things.
Yeah, but still, William, we're still there. They are even NASA has agreed that what they're putting up into space is punching holes into the ozone, and even Dr. Begich up in Alaska that does HARP, he even says the same thing that
What's
we do more
causing
damage.
controversy is the satellites looking down that can actually see the ice breaking off the Ross ice shelf in Antarctica and whatnot.
Now,
they are affecting the ozone up there with the rockets,
right.
But more importantly, what we're seeing recently looks more devastating from a top-down perspective if you don't understand the geology below it.
Right. Now get this. This is something that you remember. I think the History Channel might have had it, where they had the exploration going to Antarctica, and they were on these big ships, and they were just breaking through the ice. Well, that ice has been there for a very long time, and when you break through it, the next ship, if it can't make it through, it's breaking its own little path, and that is even contributing to the ice melt up there, down there, and not only in Antarctica, but even the Arctic. You can't break the ice. If you break it up in tiny pieces, it's going to melt faster. And that's what they were finding out. So what they have done now is if they can't follow one broken route, then they're not allowed to go until there is quite a few ships that can follow on one breakage, because they were finding out that the area that they were using was melting really quick, and it's because it's broken up.
The snow is reflective of solar
right, that too.
Gain, but the oceans absorb it, and so you don't want to ever break the ice. And the same thing's happened in the Antarctic or the Arctic. They want to use more shipping. They've got ice breakers up there, and they're causing the problems they're saying is caused by this boogeyman they call carbon dioxide.
Yeah, and methane, because they've recently, it wasn't till a few years ago they started saying, well, there's methane there too, and volcanoes. Now, the thing with the volcanoes is, like William was saying, there's a lot of them in South America, and it causes the earth to rise with all of it. The earthquakes cause it to go. So does the volcanoes. They rise up. That's why they say there's a dome happening in the top of a volcano, because it rises. And that's what's going on. Where in the United States, we got them on the West Coast, but we don't have as many on the East Coast. And that's why we're not seeing, like in Florida, like you said, Randy, that's why we're not seeing it rising, we're seeing it sinking. Um, and so some of the stuff they are right on, but they just went rogue, I believe, with this to change this into a climate catastrophe. Now, William mentioned about sunspots. Now, way back at, I believe, I'm going to say 60s and 70s, or maybe it was even earlier than that. It could have been even as back far as the 40s. What they thought is they would count sunspots, and if there wasn't very many, they knew it was going to be cold, and if there was a bunch, then they knew it was going to be hot. Well, it wasn't really panning out for them how this worked, but what they were finding out, and how the guy on this video, because you guys are gonna get this video. He said if you had X-ray vision, it would look like the sun was a monster fixed to blow up. And what that has done is that is what is causing the planet to heat up. Okay, because they have found when the sun is it's got the most spots and it is shooting those solar rays, then our planet warms up. When there's less spots and it's not going crazy, we have a cooling. So they were now deciding that it is the sun that's causing the global warming or the global cooling. So really the scientists had it right at the beginning. There is a global warming, there's a global cooling. How we live through it is best we can. Like they
Ellie,
did. Go ahead.
all of our energy production towards transportation, electricity, everything we use, the internet, whatnot, is only 1 BTU compared with billions that are rained down by the sun
Mm-hmm.
in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even on the same scale as the sun. We're unknown compared to what the sun rains down on the earth. Plus, that doesn't include the magnetosphere and all the heat generated deep within the earth through that. It doesn't account for all the subatomic particles striking deep parts of the earth. And it also doesn't account for the extreme cold above us and the extreme heat above us. So because of those extremes, there's very, very little we can do in our troposphere to change the temperature, because the magnitude of thermal exchange between below us and that being wicked from above us, we're so infinitesimal, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter what we do.
Mm-hmm. It's still going to happen. No matter we could throw water on the sun till we're blue in the face, and it ain't going to cool it off. That's kind of how my theory on this is. If the sun is going to get hotter, like not always do we get the solar flares. They say, oh, there's going to be solar flares. We're going to lose the phones and all this other stuff. But it doesn't happen every day, right? So that is where the sun, it really, according to these scientists, are controlling what is happening on Earth. And it makes a lot of sense.
Heating and cooling is driven by the solar weather.
Mm-hmm.
And how far the sun gets from the earth, and the apogees and perigees that happen with the sun, and how active the sun is. Mm-hmm. And only recently, within the last 8,000 years, has the sun been fairly stable, so we've been able to have civilization. But before that, it would have been much wilder swings.
Mm-hmm.
So
now,
William, looking at things that simply don't exist.
They're saying that actually over the last 10 years, the sun has been cooling. So how is it getting hotter if the globalists have said the sun, we're going through a cooling phase? They can't say we're going through cooling and we're going through the heat phase of the earth. They don't go that way. Don't work like that. You know, if the sun is cooling off, which means we have less um, heat time, which it wouldn't cause that 1 degree difference. And if it's a 1 degree difference, it would, like, it's still going up slowly, folks. It doesn't peak and go zing like they're saying.
They,
It don't do that over.
they can't measure it anyway because of weather modification, because we're warring with China with weather, and China's warring with us with weather. There's no way to measure it when we're dynamically changing the system. We're not changing the overall temperature,
Right.
but we're changing where the water falls, where it's hot, where it's warm, but it's only spots.
Right.
It's not global.
Right. Now, she asked about the jet stream, and that's weather thing, Randy. We run the same jet stream, and it changes. Now, how I know we're going to get snow down here is there is a jet stream that starts up in Alaska, and it goes very deep. And then when it comes up, it goes across to Arkansas. So I know, hey, I'm going to get snow. I get my snow. Well, sometimes it doesn't do that every year. And this happened for many, many years when they were experimenting in the skies. And they were trying to change things. And so then the weather pattern started changing. Now, when they said that the Earth tilted off its axis a little bit, now that did change our weather patterns. So, yes, the jet streams can change, but it's not I'm not really sure with the weather meteorologist if it changes due to solar flares. Now, go ahead, William.
We're having a dry spell here in the West,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time we're having the dry spell in the West, China is flooding.
Mm-hmm.
If China wasn't flooding, we'd have more water here in the West. They're playing weather games with each other.
Yes. There is weather modification and weather wars. And get this, William, up in Alaska, now they have the main HARP thing. And this is something you guys need to know about. HARP has always been this big thing. A big, I think there's like close to 100 antennas. I could be wrong. Now they have, whoever has bought it has now put up about 8 little harps, and they're experimenting on something, and I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm hoping that Dr. Bagage will come out with what they're doing. And I think it's a lot of the weather wars. And now I believe Friday morning I'm going to do a thing on the Colorado River drying up, and the data I found on it. It should have went with this show, but it would have been a zillion hour show with me and William. So, okay, now the other thing with the
China has a HARP, Russia has a HARP, the EU has a HARP.
Yep.
Anybody has
South
a
America's
HARP.
got one.
That's why Beijing was clear during the Olympics, was because they made it clear during the Olympics.
That's right. And I was even telling Randy that there is weather modification for farmers, and it's a machine, and you can get one that creates water, or the best one you can buy is the one that produces the clouds, and it's a machine and it just blows clouds out the side, and they put the dry ice in it, and it makes it rain or mist over the top of the crops for many, many miles. They can go up to 90 miles with this cloud. So and
it takes water out of the atmosphere and steals it from those downwind.
That's right. It sure does. It sure does. So, so you see, if they do it here, it causes an effect over here. When it's man-made, it always seems to cause a bad effect somewhere else. And so this whole, when I say man-made, this is what I'm talking about when I mentioned it at the beginning. Now, man-made info is what I believe is going on with this G Summit and the globalists, because now they don't have the data and they don't know what they're going to do. They know, let's get rid of fossil fuels because that's the problem. Well, because it's heating up the planet. And if we get rid of it, then it'll cool, or we'll slow it down. No, it's still going to be 1 degree until it could. Now get this, it can keep going for and get hotter and hotter and hotter. It can go for 400 years. It could go for 40 years. Or tomorrow we could start into an ice age that we're going to regret. And it could last for 400 years. We just don't know. We just know there's a pattern of the up and down that we have been seeing for thousands of years. This isn't changed. They changed it. The climate, the globalists have changed it. So for what? It's for the money, folks. It's for the money. And they want to get rid of fossil fuels. They just got this glutton to punish us, I guess.
They want to deindustrialize the United States so that they'll have control in their socialist countries because they can't compete with the free market. The other part is now they're arguing, well, it causes diseases because of mosquitoes and warming. But the truth is, there's more mosquitoes in Alaska than there ever has been in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not an argument either. They just go from looking for one thing after another, trying to make an argument, keep people scared, so the United States will deindustrialize so that they can have their one world government and go back to their feudalist world where there's kings and queens and it's top down and they don't have to deal with the number one threat to all feudal systems, which is new ideas and new technologies.
Okay, I just posted the link to that video. Well, I might have to block William out again. And I'll tell you what the name of it is if you want to find it that way. It is called The Great Global Warming Swindles. Can you see it there? Now, I do have to read this. This comes from the United Nations. The climate change refers to long-term shift in temperatures and weather patterns, mainly caused by human activities, especially the burning of fossil fuels. And I'm hoping that keeps them from putting that at the bottom of my video, because that's what they want me to tell you guys. But now I'm giving you different info than that. The UN will back this up because the UN stands to make a lot of money out of this through the globalists. And so as you can see, folks, it's not the CO2, it's not the methane, because get this, over the years, they say the CO2 is going up and it goes jagged. No, actually, it stayed a steady line. So is methane. So it's not erratic. It's not going up and down and all over the place like they want to tell you. It's actually a flat line. Now, what's going up is the temperature. So see, like I said at the beginning, I'm not doubting that the Earth isn't warming up. I'm just doubting this other stuff they want to add to it to make it sound like, oh, the weather's getting worse. Now, how many of you? Now I remember my childhood is lots of really, really cool lightning storms. My mom would take us out in the front yard, and we would pretend bowl. And, we'd be throwing the ball because we were bowlers. So she would even give us a ball sometimes. We'd roll it. Well, if there was lightning and thunder, it meant we got a strike. If we didn't get nothing, then we got 0. And so it was a little game with the lightning. But I remember it so fierce back then. And I remember a lot of snow here in Arkansas that isn't happening. So it's not the CO2 or the methane causing it not to snow here. There is a global warming, cooling happening. So that we do know. So we know that over the years, even with Bernie Sanders, we're all going to die. Well, what about China and India that is so polluted? Is it going to make a difference? If we're the only ones that quit, is it going to change climate for us? Is it going to make the tornado stop? Is it going to make hurricane season go away? Hurricane season has been going on for thousands of years. It's something. It's the weather pattern that runs just right, and it creates a very intense storm. Now, weather modification, I believe, I don't know what William believes on this. I believe we could steer a hurricane, but I don't think we can make a hurricane. Can we create fierce thunderstorms and tornadoes? That I think is what we were talking about earlier, where we can cause it to flood. Uh, how many times have we heard about ski resorts? Hey, let's make some snow. Well, if we can make snow, why aren't we making it for the California Sierras? Why, if we can make water, why aren't we making water and refilling the reservoirs? You see, it doesn't make sense. And this is what these scientists have got the info on. This is what they're asking the other side. And the other side said, we don't know. We'll get back to you on that. Circle around and we'll get it back to you. Okay, go ahead.
So when the last administration came into office and we made the big push to using natural gas, which by the way is methane, we cleaned it. We did more to clean the environment in the United States than any of these solar arrays, than any of these wind turbines. And if we'd have continued doing that and compressed it into liquid natural gas, we could be sending it to Europe right now instead of them burning dirty Russian oil. And they would have a cleaner environment. That's not what they're about.
Right. William, with all the technology that we gain every year, I mean, look at like Rendy, she's part of race cars. Look at the technology over race cars over the last 30 years alone. I mean, the things I seen in the 70s compared to what I'm seeing now, it's blown me away with a car. And not only that, but now we're looking at electric cars. They're not flying ones, but we got electric cars. So the technology they have, why have we not fixed this? Right? If this is what they, according to the climate people and the globalists, we can fix it if we get rid of fossil fuels and natural gas. Well, wait a minute. We have got the cleanest gas, the cleanest coal, the cleanest, like you said, natural gas than we have seen in history. Not only that, the cleaner fuel has even been better on the race cars and what they're seeing and the performances they're getting compared to 30 years ago.
Right. The race cars use, like Daytona, Indianapolis, they're using alcohol. And the drag races are using nitromethane. None of them are using gas.
See? That's progress. That's technology showing us that we have come a long way. And from going from the gas to the alcohol to the methane. And see, so why can't we let these scientists come up with something that they could possibly do? Now, get this. If we go into a cooling, a cold spell, folks, or an ice age, those solar panels are not going to work. We're going to put them up take up half the planet with these stupid solar panels. And if we go into a cooling area or an ice age, because remember there was global cooling at one time, then it was global warming, global cooling, global warming. It's a pattern. So what happens when we go into global cooling? Those solar panels aren't going to help you out. And see, this is...
Solar panels don't last forever. They only got like a 15 to 20 year life. Every time a photon strikes it, it gets a little weaker.
Or corn. She said corn makes ethanol. See? Corn. But now get this, if that burns dirty, though, is not as clean as what we can get. But they could work on it. So see, this is the thing, folks, is as we are looking at what the globalists and our own politicians, it's out to make them a buck. They could care less of they're not going to be around in 20 years. These are a bunch of old farts that are like in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Where are they going to be in 30 years when this next generation, the ugly girl, gets in and sees they made a horrible mistake? And it's going to be this this time of uh, in our history is going to be made out that we're a bunch of fools, that we fell for something very, very stupid. Or is it true? And this is what happened with the heating of the planet when it was super high, when it got the hottest it could be. We weren't there to see if they had these natural disasters. We weren't there to see the snow or what the ice age did. We weren't there. We know about it. We look in the ice cores, and we could see it happen, but we don't have the experience. We might be experiencing storms, but more than likely the storms is caused by the sun, folks. And that's what
Ellie,
these scientists are saying. Go ahead.
during World War II, we burnt Europe to the ground. We burnt Russia to the ground. We burned half the Pacific to the ground. And what happened? It cooled off.
Mm-hmm.
We put all that carbon dioxide up into the air by burning all those buildings, by burning all those cities, by all the destruction we created, and yet the temperature dropped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it don't. And I think that this is where their whole climate is crumbling down. And now this year, they are really scrambling to figure out what they. It's crumbling. Our idea is crumbling. The people aren't falling for this whole. If we get rid of all the fossil fuel, it's going to correct anything. What does fossil fuel in the ground have to do with the ground warming up? It's not. They say, oh, it's the pollution. It's the CO2. No, it's not the CO2, and it's not the fossil fuels in the ground. Now get this. There was a study, and it was one of these scientists, and you'll see a bunch of them when you watch this video. You really need to watch this, folks, to understand and see the proof that me and William were talking about. I lost my train of thought. Oh my God. William, do you got something? Because I just forgot what I was going to say.
So the climate cult is collapsing. That's why they're so vociferous right now.
Mm-hmm.
What they're going to turn to, the next big thing is going to be biologicals. We're going to have all these terrible diseases because the climate thing isn't working anymore, and they have to instill fear and control people. Mm-hmm. And so that will be the next big push. Watch and see. Let's see if I'm right or not, but Bill Gates seems to think so.
Yeah, he thinks that's the new thing because it's warming and diseases are coming out of the ground. I don't know if that's his thing on it, but that's what I was hearing, that as the planet's warming up, then we have things that are coming out of the ground like we've never seen before. And it's only a matter of time before we get really sick. But you have to realize, folks, a lot of these biolabs, and I found this out with the Hillary Clinton and looking into the Clintons, is they bought up a bunch of biolabs, not only in Africa, but all over the world. And I'm finding out that a lot, they got a few in Ukraine. And they are bringing these things back to life. Now, understand that her and Fauci have been friends since the 80s. The same people in Washington, they have been the same crowd for decades. And in fact, Fauci even had a crush on Hillary. And we come to find out. So Hillary pretty much put him in charge of, or working with the NIH and all these biolabs. So that's why you can't take Fauci down. And then, of course, when Bill Gates came along, it was just the backing that the politicians needed to push forward a lot of what we're seeing now. And we had, if you guys remember, we got our shots in the arm. We've a lot of us still got scars, and we really did think that we had all of these diseases out of our country, and now we're starting to see them come in and fierce. And so, but they're blaming all of this on not, don't look at the labs. Let's look at all of the next stuff that's going to come out. And it will, like William said, it's either going to be bioweapons or it's going to be something that comes out of a animal or out of the ground, some weird mushroom somewhere. Um, so, um, William, basically that is it, because I would really like them to go and watch that documentary tonight, or when you get the first chance you get. I know Randy and Karen will probably go watch it. But then you'll learn, you'll understand what we're talking about tonight. And it's basically, we're discussing what these scientists have found out and what they want the rest of the world to know, because they were the top of the lines. These were climate professors. These were people that worked on the government as a climate person. It's not like these guys are, oh, some scientists from Harvard or nothing like that. You'll see their titles. You will see them, and you can even stop it. You can go check out their name, and you'll see who they are. They really are. This isn't no ugly girl saying you're ruining my planet. Um, this is science. And I know, like William said, that you can't, science is only good for so much. And in 10 years, maybe we'll find out that both of them were really wrong, and it's something else that has caused this, for the weather to warm, and the ground and the atmosphere, everything to warm up and cause it to cool off. And it's happened over and over again. William, do you got anything to say?
I have kind of a joke.
Okay, sure.
That I remember as a blue collar worker, and how I felt the government looked at me, for I'm a mushroom, because they keep me in the dark and feed me nothing but piles and piles of, well, you know. It's just a joke.
That's all right. Yeah, that's about what it is. You got to wonder if they do that in the lab too, and what they do it with. So
it was metaphorical, but okay.
So does anybody have any questions? Because I know the questions were rolling through our chat big time. Now, if you guys do have over there in Facebook, if you guys have watched it later or watch this on YouTube later and you got a question, put it down in the comments. We'll keep an eye on it, and we will. But I say watch this. Watch it, share it, because your friends and family are just going to go, this makes sense. This really does make sense. And it's not that we want to debunk or say they're lying. We're not attacking them. We're just explaining what we have been able to discover. And, I'm not no big bad ecologist or a chemist or none of that. I'm just somebody that was watching it and had a lot of questions. My big beef is us throwing garbage in the water. That's just, the climate stuff doesn't bug me half as much as going to a beach that people throw their garbage on and it ends up in the water. That's me.
There's no reason for us to be dirty.
And Karen asked if anybody else watched 2000 Mules. 2000
Yes.
Mules is on our Facebook, and you can watch it for free. So if you know someone that says, oh, I can't find it and I don't want to pay for it, send them to Facebook. You have to scroll down through a lot of our shows and some posts, but it is in there for free. But do watch this. This one is on YouTube and it's free, and you'll really walk away with a whole new sense of what is going on on our planet, and that it's so logical, so easy, so simple, that it's like the ice cube thing I said. You know, if you put ice in salt water, it's going to go quick. And of course, it's going to melt. Or if you throw a ship through in many different areas, it's going to melt faster. And we're
If
learning. We learn every day how to take care of our planet.
if somebody ever says something so complicated you can't understand it, walk the other way.
Yes, yes. Okay, folks, I thank William tonight because there is a war on this planet and it's being discussed at Davos. And what it does is it affects me and you, our gas prices, the increase of our prices. This is a war on the world through them wanting to keep the climate going and
There are
the
no blue
Green New
collar
Deal.
workers there.
Huh?
There's no blue collar workers at Davos.
No.
That's us.
No, well, isn't Jack Pacific,
He's a reporter
Pacific?
that doesn't want to be there.
Well, he didn't want to be there, but he went there, and they stopped him, they detained him, they arrested him, and they're not going to let him in. And you know, they did that to Alex Jones with Bilderberg, the meetings they had, and they did the same thing to Alex Jones. They arrested him, they detained him, they pull him away, they take him down the street. Uh, they did the same thing to Alex as they're doing to Jack, because they don't want people in there that's going to oppose on camera. They want it to be all nice, all pretty. Everybody's calm and quiet. And then you got ugly girl. Oh, you're gonna ruin my planet. She's scary. She gets on there, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm scared. That's scary.
Their biggest gripe that I've heard so far at Davos is they're upset about the nationalists.
Yeah. Yep.
People who want to preserve their sovereignty.
Yes. Yes. And so, okay, so that is it, William, and I thank you. We're getting pretty good at this, and this is definitely a war. And you know, everybody's seeing World War III, and maybe they thought, "Oh, good, Ukraine." No, we go over a lot of things. It is a war, and this is a war against us and our planet. And it doesn't matter whether you're red, green, white, black, purple, blue, whatever. It affects you the same way. And
it's a war by other means.
That's right. And it's a war on us because now look at what it's done to the world as far as fossil fuels. And that's very sad.
They have to do that because they can't stand toe to toe with us.
That's right.
That's the truth.
Yes. Okay. So I didn't see anybody ask any questions. If gas was so bad, we couldn't. If gas is so bad, they wouldn't be burning on at the oil rigs.
It's too bad we have to flare that off and not make electricity so people can stay cool in their homes, and people in Texas don't have to go without power.
That's right. That's right. And you know, they're already saying that their solar grid and isn't going to make it through the summer. It's brownouts and major outages. Well, you know, it's called the same way with the gas. Just go get the gas, go get the oil, give us the gas, and we'll go on. It's the same way with the electricity. Pull the switch and turn us on, or turn us on. That's so easy. You know, but they've got so many people convinced that even the electric is going to give us issues, you know, and we need to be off the grid. No, we don't need to be off the grid, and we don't need to get rid of our gas. We just need to get back to work. We need to get back to oil. We need to get this country back to where it was a few years ago when we were all happy and we were all enjoying what this planet had, what God gave us with this planet, and to not abuse it, but to enjoy it. So with that, I say goodbye. And tomorrow we'll have, if you haven't seen the weather, jump on in and take a look at the weather in the morning, and then, of course, news. And then we don't have a show tomorrow night, but we have 2 shows on Friday. So with that, folks, God bless you. And, maybe check in on a neighbor that might need a can of soup. Maybe there's a little old lady in your neighborhood. Go take her some soup, either homemade, a can, or whatever, and maybe some crackers. And, so she don't have to buy it. She might be on a fixed income. Uh, so with that, we will see everyone definitely tomorrow. So take care and God bless.